This is Not God on the Yalak Emet channel on Twitter, YouTube, Patreon. This is the New Testament is Fake series for March 19, 2022. This lesson is titled Teach Us to Pray. My intent in my lessons, this one and all the others, is really to get you to reach understanding, to have a little bit of understanding, to see things a little clearer for yourself. My intent is not to get you to believe me, to believe what I'm saying, but to get you to have a little understanding, to seek out understanding for yourself. Because real teaching, a real strong, powerful word, does not only come to you to have you reach understanding only for what is being said, but reaches even to the unsaid. And so that is how I approach my lessons. From Isaiah 49, verse 4. Then I said, I have labored in vain. I have spent my strength for naught, and in vain. Yet surely my judgment is with the Lord, and my work with my God. Now, we know that David in the Bible, in the Old Testament, he was always praying. Like, there are just a lot of prayers, especially when you read the book of Psalms. Many other Israelites knew how to pray as well, including the patriarchs. They just prayed. It's like no one had to really teach them how to pray. But disciples in the New Testament wanted Jesus to teach them to pray, when prayer should have been a part of their life with Yahweh. Even Solomon, in dedicating the temple built in his time, was praying to the Most High and saying, if your people turn back in their heart to this place and to you, and to cry unto you when they're in a far land in captivity, hear them. So prayer was a big thing, and Solomon prayed that prayer, which was a far-reaching prayer, to reach into the future when the children of Israel might be in captivity and would turn to prayer for desperate help from their God. So the Old Testament Israelites, they knew about prayer, and they did it feverishly. They did it in a powerful manner, and they did it in a careful manner. They knew how to strategize in prayer. They could zone right in like an eagle seeing something small from down on the ground, and he can just swoop down, just dive down and grab that thing. With great precision, he dives to the target. Israelites knew how to do this. They did this to meet with God, to get God to stir up their spiritual life and keep them connected and bring them to higher heights in the spirit or in their spiritual walk with the Most High. So they used prayer carefully and strategically to maintain a connection with God and get a response. They also used prayer to even get military action from God, where God would strike down their enemies in a time of war. They knew how, with skill and precision again, and with great command of spiritual power and had access to realms of the Spirit that would allow even miracles to take place. This was the Israelite in the Old Testament. But all of a sudden we get to the New Testament and no Israelite knew what to do about prayer to get these miracles, even to use prayer to drive out the Romans, even to use prayer to drive out the Romans out of their land in New Testament times, even though Solomon already got a contract set up with God by prayer that said, if your people are in captivity and they pray and they cry out to you when they remember this place, hear them from heaven. So if you are Israel and being such spiritual people who are linked to the legacy of these powerful praying people in the Torah who worked miracles that boggle the mind, you would not be limited in any word that comes out of your mouth or any desire in the heart and any intention where freedom is concerned when you are living under the Romans and you remember Solomon's prayer. Because you are not going to box yourself in knowing such powerful praying people of the past and that Solomon got a good response from the Most High when he dedicated that temple and prayed that prayer. You are not going to limit yourself by saying, well, it's not slave ship captivity, so we got to stay stuck under the Romans. As long as you are held captive and cannot be free the way you want to live. I mean, how is it that they chose to pick up swords and to fight back at the Romans, but nothing was said of the strong prayers that they did, according to Solomon's prayer, to drive the Romans back to hell? These are the no knowledge of prayer Israelites who asked Jesus to give them a lesson on prayer, when their fathers already gave all kinds of lessons on prayer. Prayer just to find food, prayer for deliverance of all kinds, prayer from sickness, prayer in war, and prayer to remain connected with God. When David, even in Psalm 27, was saying his desire is just to dwell in the temple of the Lord, in the courts of the Lord, all the days of his life. Can you beat a prayer like that? It is more powerful than a prayer for war. But these New Testament Israelites did not know anything about that. Just a prayer to be connected with God. They are not asking Jesus to teach them how to pray to fight war against the Romans or to be delivered from bondage and so on. They just want to know how to pray, just a connection with God. And they refuse to read their version of Psalm 27 or even Psalm 23. They ignored all the lessons of the praying ones in the Torah when Isaiah already said line upon line, precept upon precept. They ignored all of those, so they did not know about prayer anymore. The same way they ignored the commandments and got into the problems that they did. These in the New Testament are hunchback, bent over Quasimodo Israelites. These are not Torah Israelites, so they were placed not in the Old Testament Torah kingdom of Israel, they were placed in the New Testament Roman kingdom of Israel. Hello. So in Luke 11 verse 1, it reads, "And it came to pass that as he was praying in a certain place, when he ceased, one of his disciples said unto him, Lord, teach us to pray, as John also taught his disciples." And then he goes on to teach them and tell them just what to say when praying. So they are willing to ask a question, a strong question like this, a question that might be at the foundational level of one's relationship with God as it deals with connection with God, to pray. They are willing to ask this kind of question of Jesus, but they refused to ask that question to the Most High Himself in their heart, which would be a prayer itself. Because had they been willing to have a connection with the Most High, they would not need Jesus. Because if they were asking that question to the Most High themselves, the answer would have come in them being driven back to the prayers of Moses and David and Elijah and others. And it would have driven them even back to the commandments. So isn't it a little weird that Israelites are asking someone to teach them to pray, when prayer should just come natural? Look at Genesis chapter 20, verse 17, with Abraham. Now, this guy, Abraham, this patriarch, we are told that he grew up with his father, Terah, in a house of idolatry. In his prayer with God, he is given a promise from God, because that interaction to say, get up and go, and I'll make of you a great nation, and so on, that is prayer going on in the heart. And it showed him looking up at the stars and so on, and the sand in his mind, or in the mind's eye. He looked at the sand and he looked up at the stars. And communication was made and a promise given. So his prayer, or his interaction or communication with God, moved him into the realm of what is not normal. So Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. Abraham did not have the history of millions of praying Israelites to learn prayer from. Only soon after he begins his journey with God in the scriptures, he moves past simply praying to have a connection with God and begins to bring about healing through his prayers. And God healed Abimelech and his wife and servants. And so the power of his prayer being new to God, not like the Israelites who were born unto Israelite parents and born into the nation of God that is supposed to be unique on the earth, because no other nation had such a connection with God like Israel. And so they were born into things that had to do with the divine. The presence of the divine was all around them in their land. It was in their house. Everything they did was centered around the movement and direction of the spirit and presence and power of God. Abraham could not claim this, but quickly he was able to do a whole house healing with his prayer. But the New Testament Israelites had all these Israelites to learn from, and they said, teach us to pray. That laziness toward observing the commandments and keeping scriptural doctrine, it cut everything off from them, it seems, till even prayer was gone. Because if you disconnect yourself from God, everything will be lost. Watch who you learn from. You will be disconnected and for a time not even know it. From the book of Psalms, chapter 84, verse 8, here's a prayer here. O Lord God of hosts, hear my prayer. Give ear, O God of Jacob. Selah. I remember the first time when I asked about this word Selah to my pastor. I was a small boy at the time. He used to stand, he's retired now, he used to stand at the door sometimes, but mainly at the front of the church by the altar, which was in front of the pulpit area. He would step down from the rostrum and just stand right there, and the whole church, including visitors, could come up and shake his hand and just say a quick word, a nice greeting, say hello to him, and he would say hello to them, and so on. And we had a big church. We were like the headquarters church for our organization down there, and we had a very big church. There are bigger churches now, I guess, but at the time, like the average churches around our area, there were probably, you could probably sit 50, 80 people in them and so on. And if you saw a church that had 150 people in it, that was like a big church. And I think the first church I went to as a child, as a small child, it was more like a house converted into a church. And maybe every Sunday morning you might have, I don't know, maybe 20 people there or something like that, if I remember correctly. 20, 25 people. Our church building was normally about 1,500 every Sunday morning. And if you would jam pack it, of course, you're going to fit more. And then we had the upstairs as well, and people would stay outside also, right? And then we would even set up speakers on special occasions where more people came so they could hear outside. And then we had an overflow next door as well, because we owned the property next door. We set up a school there and whatever, like regular school for children, like kindergarten kind of stuff. But when we had convocations on special occasions, we were really dealing, and then we had a big hall at the back. We were really dealing with like even about 2,500. But normally on a Sunday morning, maybe about 1,500, somewhere there. So we had a big church. And he would stand there and greet. And I was a small boy, like 10 years old or so, 9, 10. And I would ask him questions all the time. I'm going to tell you slowly. I don't know what I'm going to start at, but because I probably won't fit it all in one lesson, but I'm going to tell you stories that happened from I was a child going to church as a boy, and what things I've learned now to show you the trickery of Christianity and the deception in it all. Because my spiritual journey now is showing me how deception was able to be put in us. I discovered the deception in church by revelation. When I go back and I look back at the things that took place in my church and the people who were put in place and so on, I mean, they told us that the Lord was calling these people and they're going to anoint them for service and so on. Now I know better. People are chosen to keep the thing going in a certain direction. But my work is with my God. So I have been spirited to teach lessons the way I do. But I would ask my pastor questions and he would look at me because I would ask some questions that maybe just a grown-up person who had a Bible, a big Bible and concordance and so on and whatever would be concerned with. And he would answer me every time. And, I'd be like, oh, I felt good. Then I would go to school the whole week and it'd be on my mind and so on. Then this one Sunday, I asked him, I keep seeing this word Selah. when I read the book of Psalms, just like we saw it here in Psalm 84, verse 8. Give ear, O God of Jacob, Selah. And that's the first time he looked at me and he didn't have an answer. He didn't know what it meant. My pastor, he was a good man. He really loved us all. He would even look out for jobs for the people in the congregation. He had very good relations with the people in the church, and we with him. It was a really nice church. Like, it was a real family kind of thing. We were all tight. It was really, really a good church. And we used to do sports, cricket, all kinds of stuff on the weekends. Like, it was a big church. We had a good program going. Later on, I got involved in the recording, running the sound, and we had a gospel magazine for youth that I recorded with a team every weekend, and then it aired on RGR, the radio in Jamaica. It aired every Thursday. The Gospel Magazine is what it was called. And then we recorded also on Thursdays the main church broadcast. No, the other one, Gospel Magazine, was on Love FM, and then the RGR radio station, that one was aired 11:15 every Sunday night for the main church radio broadcast, outreach broadcast. So I got involved in all kinds of. We had a nice program going and whatever. But I always had more, and so I would ask him all these questions, and I said, what does Selah mean? Because we didn't have a concordance at the time. I didn't know that stuff. We just had a Bible, and just a plain Jane Bible, might I say. And he didn't know. He says, I have to look it up. And I think that was the first time he probably thought, because I was asking questions all along, he probably just thought, oh, I just like asking questions, I just want to know. But I think that's probably the first time that he realized this young man is digging, this boy is digging. He wants more. He wants more. But you see, the problem, when man does not raise you up, you will often be ignored. And so as it went all along, everybody else was chosen and chosen and chosen, and I was just left on the outside. But I did the sound, and I was still busy. I played the drums as well. But the word, I was somewhat ignored with that, but for good reason. Because now the ones who were chosen and who went ahead, they're my friends. I still love them and all that. But now I can see that had they been sidelined, they would probably be seeing the things I'm seeing today. But they were chosen. So he came back the following week, the following Sunday, and I went up to shake his hand again. And then he said, yes, the word Selah. And he said it's like a pause, like they're doing it for meditation and dwelling on what was said. And here it is now, the word Selah, H5542. It says to lift up, exalt, a technical musical term, probably showing accentuation, pause, interruption. And people who play deep music, as you will even tell by just listening to music carefully, when the music gets in your soul, you get to dwell on what is happening inside you at certain points in the music, when a certain pause is made and so on, and you just get lost in it. So when he says here, give ear, O God of Jacob, Selah. And he had just said, hear my prayer. When he goes on to say Selah, he is riveting in to his soul the reality of this experience, that his prayer was getting right into the ears of God. It is a meditation that was sealing the prayer. Selah, it is the wait, to pause, to dwell, to go deep in the realm of the spirit, where the flesh cannot go, but only the heart can find that place. That hidden inner corridor in the heart that leads one to the sanctuary where God can be found listening. That is Selah in my words. Because the praying person knows there is a sanctuary inside that one does not need to go to. They carry it with them. It moves with them all the time. This is a praying person, one who remains connected. So you can understand David was such a person, always praying. And the Israelites were like that. That's why every time they went off track, they would eventually come back. Because they remember, if we want to find God, let's call out unto him again. Let's pray and return and get back to the word that we rejected, because they knew the word was a connection to their God. So when the Israelites said to Jesus, teach us to pray, if the word is the connection to God, it is telling you that the New Testament Israelites were not connected to God. Because word is connection to God. That's why the word is the Torah, and the Torah, if you keep it, it keeps you connected, because the word itself, the Torah itself, is the connection to God. When that is unplugged, you do not pray. You do not keep Torah. You do not keep commandments. You do not keep the word, because something has been unplugged. Had they not been unplugged, there would have been no need to ask Jesus to teach them to pray. And he taught them a prayer which has become so widespread, like all over the world. Our Father, who art in heaven. And this prayer of Jesus was so emphasized and magnified, spread all over the world and published, not just in Bibles, but sometimes on brochures and on wall plaques and every place else that you can find it, in many different buildings that have nothing to do with God. Now, who would have had that kind of money to push the Lord's Prayer that will big up Jesus all over a heathen world? Show you that that prayer is exposing Jesus. Because if Jesus was teaching the connection to God, as I just told you, true prayer is connection to God. True prayer is the Torah that is active in the heart. It maintains the connection. Why would the Gentiles publish a New Testament prayer to big up Jesus and to help you restore and maintain your connection with God, and pay their money to tell you the way back to God and the way to be connected and remain so? It is a lie. The New Testament is fake. They will never tell you. Yet you might say, or some people might say, the Bible has been tampered with and so on, and all the other things that they say, and they've gotten rid of some artifacts and all kinds of history they've hidden or destroyed and so on, and destroyed identity and whatever, just to keep you from finding your way back. But they give you the main thing, prayer, the word that connects to God, and put their money on it in publishing it everywhere to teach you. From a child in school, we used to even pray that. It is because the Lord's Prayer coming out of the mouth of Jesus does not connect any Israelite to God. I don't know if you guys are ready for the change that you need to make inside. Instead of asking Jesus to teach them to pray, they could have simply just gone back to even the prayer of Solomon. And instead of struggling with, I don't know how to pray, just do exactly what Solomon said in his own prayer when they cry out to you. In other words, when they repent in their heart and want to turn back and they cry out to you and say, "Forgive us, we are returning to the commandments," no Roman Empire could have held them back. Instead, unlike them still being gathered together there, although others were elsewhere in the different areas, but at least they were still gathered in Jerusalem and wherever in Israel. Instead, now that they dropped the ball, we are scattered all over and don't even agree on prayer, on how to be connected. Israel in the Bible, the only nation that knows God in the Bible, did not know how to pray in the New Testament. That is weird. Final verse, as we have mentioned how other people were praying all over the Old Testament. Elijah was also a praying man. You're telling me all those Israelites sitting down twiddling their thumbs, saying, "We're under the Romans, we're under the Romans," and refused to take examples of prayer from David, from Solomon, from Elijah, and so on. And instead of Jesus giving them the examples of those people and others in the Torah who prayed, Jesus gave them something new. Because in order to have had the connection, they would have had to go back to the Torah-keeping people in the Old Testament who kept the commandments and knew that even keeping of the commandments was prayer itself. That's why they got the power back then on the pages of the Torah. So that early in the New Testament, they didn't know how to pray and had to ask Jesus. But look closer to the end of the New Testament. James chapter 5 verse 17. It seems James knew. What would make James know, but the other Israelites not know? You see, the New Testament is written to trick, to deceive. Because Israelites would have known about the prayers of their fathers from Torah days. But Jesus' prayer was set up to big up Jesus and to turn people away. There are so many shallow people who, when they first think of praying, it's the Lord's Prayer, Lord's Prayer. Usually, those are people who don't go to church often. And so Lord's Prayer just come to their mind. Like when you're in a Christian church and you hear somebody praying in some public setting that's not a spiritual setting, it's not a church and so on, but they might happen to say a prayer, it's the Lord's Prayer they're pulling out. Because it falls in line with liturgy and old dried up stuff that does not have the spirit of Torah in the heart. But James says Elias was a man subject to like passions as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. So James knew that because they knew the Old Testament stories. You're telling me other Israelites did not know the Old Testament stories and decide to do what their fathers did? They just sat down twiddling their thumbs waiting on some magic man to come like Jesus? This is the trick. Because when people are desperate and they're drowning, they'll grab on even to a straw, we are told. Israelites are going downhill real fast under the Romans, and they never think to return to prayer, to return to what they know that line upon line, precept upon precept, showed them all throughout the days of the Torah. that Israelites, when they were going downhill and slipping real fast, they would turn back to the Lord at some point. Until the last point, it was too bad. The Moses says, I'm not going to allow you to turn back. You're going to Assyrian and Babylonian captivity. But all along before that, they would eventually return. So a line upon line would let them know that when it gets this bad, we need to do the same to return. Instead, the precept upon precept was ignored, and they did something completely new to learn prayer from Jesus that does not fit in with the life and identity of an Israelite. All Israelites would know about prayer. They asked Jesus to teach them because this is nothing that has to do with Torah, with the nation of Israel. This is about the Roman Empire pulling a fast one on us and on the world. If the New Testament Israel is shown in New Testament as needing to know how to pray, it is shown that way not because the Israelite did not know prayer, but because the New Testament is just fake. Because Israelites would have known all kinds of prayers. Even sinners today buy books of prayer, like 100 prayers in the book at a Christian bookstore. And they would just pray one after the other. Every day you pray a prayer. But Israelites, who were the only nation to know God, according to Torah, they said, teach us. They said, teach us to pray. Is that strange to you? Is the New Testament as worthy as you have been taught? Yalak Emmett Channel, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon.